Good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is Lizzie and Justin from Thirdspace. We are live on a Sunday morning here in London, just after 9 a.m. It's November, I think, 2019. So this is a reminder to us of where we are, but also to you who may be listening, who knows, centuries hence. We don't know how long these things will hang around for. And this is the 112th time that we've done this, Lizzie. So welcome to you all, those of you who are with us live and those of you who catch us later in the various forms in which you do. We are so glad that you're here. And I think, Lizzie, from what we were saying before, we're glad that we're here too.
Yes.
Which is really, it's always feels important to say that, actually. What a source of gladness this project, this practice is, I know, for both of us, which is why we're still here doing it. And it's a gift to be able to share that gladness around. So we have a wonderful source this morning chosen by Lizzie. And we thought that maybe the way to begin, however you're listening, is just to take a moment that we can gather ourselves so that it's possible to let this source, when we get to it, in. So unless you're driving or cycling or something like that, maybe we could all just take a moment before we do anything else and feel what it's like to welcome yourself and to be welcomed by us, so that we can then be welcomed by these amazing words by Derek Walcott that Lizzie's chosen. One way you could do this is very simply to see what it's like to welcome the feel of your own body. So this may or may not sound strange to do, but you could welcome your feet and welcome your legs. And you could welcome your hands and welcome your arms. And you can welcome your whole body from head to toe. And maybe most importantly, you could welcome your own heart. And that might be a very good way to begin.
Thank you, Justin. So I've just come out of a winging it breastfeeding session with my 1-month-old gorgeous little baby girl. And each time we do this, it's kind of a touch and go so far as to whether I can manage it. And so far it's working. And I want to say thank you to Matthew, my husband, who unquestionably rallies himself around to help try and get Vesper into a place where she can let me go for a minute. So it's a team effort that I'm here. I'm really grateful that he doesn't even complain or whatever. It's just like a given in his life that turning towards life exists, and he has to do whatever he needs to do to make it possible for me. So I'm really grateful for that, and also grateful, Justin, for you bringing us here in that way as well, for this really amazing poem, which also is very, for me, like a very feeling poem. Like, it's not obvious to me what it even means, which is the quality of so many of our sources, and which is why I love this conversation so much, and that we discover and learn genuinely in the conversation and what gets born here. And as we always say, this isn't a rehearsed thing, that it's an alive learning for everyone, including and especially us. And I feel grateful that we can bring this to this space so that it will give birth to more understanding of what Derek Walcott's talking about in this poem, Love After Love. So I'm going to read, and we'll begin. So in the spirit of that place of receiving that Justin invited us into, that place of welcome, here is Love After Love by Derek Walcott. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit. Feast on your life.
It's quite something to be in your orbit, Lizzie, as you read this, just to feel and hear your voice. So thank you. So I'm going to do the same. A reminder before I read this that for everyone who's listening, you can always come and find the source either on our Facebook page or on our website, which we'll talk about later. So this is Love After Love by Derek Walcott. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Feast on your life.
It's so lovely to have that read to me. And I feel like it's an invitation to return home by bringing this implicit notion forward of what I relate to as my essence versus my constructed self. And to find there's an invitation for each of those parts to welcome the other, not just the essence being kind to the constructed self, but the constructed self also being kind to the essence of me. Like there's something really beautiful in those two invitations. And when he says each will smile at the other's welcome, it seems to be such an integrating invitation to realize that there isn't only like the good part of me, something like that, doing the inviting, but that all of me, in all my distortion and all of my fear and neurosis, has the capacity to also welcome something, somehow feels like a welcome for that, all those parts that are trying to maintain the status quo or hold me in a pattern or sabotage things or be asleep to life or whatever. And so I feel like it's a real mind-boggling invitation in a way, because it's not doing the normal thing that my mind does and maybe other people's do of like polarizing. It's doing the opposite of polarization. It's doing the opposite of separation. It's enabling me to feel a coming togetherness, like a like mixing things up so that I'm not so sure about this or that. So when I read it and when you read it to me, Justin, there's a beautiful confusion that comes about that allows me to not be in the same rat run of thinking and of perceiving that I can be in, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yes, what you just said is so wonderful, Lizzie, and I'd never seen this. I've read this poem 100 times and read it to people and had it read to me, and I'd never seen this part of it that you're just drawing attention to. Each will smile at the other's welcome. So I suppose what's been obvious to me until just 30 seconds ago when you said this, and I'm loving the feeling of something new, so new coming forward. So it's been pretty clear to me for a while that I, and I suspect most of us, live in an ongoing state of kind of alienation from ourselves, of estrangement from ourselves. And we're encouraged to do that by the culture that we live in, and we do it to ourselves endlessly, where we discount ourselves and abandon ourselves and move away from ourselves, either to not feel certain things, like I won't feel this about myself, I won't feel that, I don't want to feel grief or sadness or anger or whatever it is, but also because I think our surrounding culture we've so lost the value of the simple act of return to our own lives. Somehow everything is always over there. It's always over there. I don't have it. I have to get it over there. And that's true whether we find ourselves momentarily or for a long time missing resources that we really need, or whether we're comfortable and cared for, we still find ourselves so easily making the exact opposite move to the one that Derek Walcott makes. Somehow we think it's narcissistic in a bad way to consider the possibility that there might be a love relationship that goes on with ourselves or between parts of ourselves, and so we're always pushing away. So all of that's was what I imagined might be to be said about this poem, but the part that you've just brought in that so deepens my appreciation of it is that even embedded in that story of, oh, the gifts of return, for me anyway, is so easily the judgments about the parts of me that don't want to return, the parts of me that judge one another, and all the ways I've messed up by not living in the way that Derek Walcott invites. So there's always the possibility of even this being the thing which I have to get to. Mm. So the kindness and the welcome in this, actually in that first little verse, the time will come. This will happen. And it will be with elation that every part will welcome every other part and smile at the welcome, including all the parts that I continue to judge by my longing to return to myself in some way, to feel welcomed. That's so beautiful to hear you say that and to feel you say that. And it gives such permission for me for the simple act of, you mean I really can all be welcome? That my welcoming myself back doesn't have to involve a sneaky abandonment of some other part. That's really something. So I'm very moved by that. And I was struck as you were reading that right in the middle, it's so often seems to me in many of the poems that we read that there's something in the middle that is the thing. It's like bracketed on either side. This line, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you. So what a thing it is to find that even though it may never have felt like this or may not have felt like this since we were very, very tiny, sort of Vespers age, when we got cradled and held, for those of us who did get cradled and held in an uncomplicated way, to find there's been something of us that has been loving us all the while and that we haven't had a clue about. Mm. And when we find that out, when we even get a glimpse of it, it seems to me, oh, I carry with me something that I'm easily estranged from, that is me, but also loves me, is maybe a route into a profound kind of safety that can carry us in the midst of whatever else is going on. So this isn't, it seems to me, just a poem about the relief and joy of those moments, and they are relief filled and joy filled when we recognize ourselves and can greet ourselves. It's also something about how we find that we've always been carried in the world.
Yeah. And I think, twice in this poem it says sit here and sit. And one time it says eat, and one time it says feast. And it's so difficult to talk about this part that you're saying, this essential usness that's loving us actively and has always loved us, and to which we've become estranged, with which we've become estranged. And I think the invitation to sit and to feast and to eat feels to me like this invitation to stop and become present to presence, to life itself that is within this body and in all kinds of other places too. But there's some deep relief that comes over me in that invitation to simply sit and wonder, what is this? Like to have a notion, an idea that there's life itself living through me that is coloured by and informed by my preferences and my personality and my history and my circumstances and all those kind of things. But there's also this untouchable, non-negotiable, essential Lizzie-ness, Justinness, whatever our name is-ness, that is right here all the time, that we turn away from and don't even know about. But that if we sit and we be still for a moment, or even become present in our walking for a moment, or put our hand on a tree, or breathe in the air a little more consciously as we are walking along, whatever simple act of self-remembering we might do, we have a chance of coming into contact with this unshakable, unquestionable presence that is who we are. And it's such a blessing to be able to put down things, to just see what that is, to feel what that is, to experiment with what that might be. And I can feel it now. It's like I think that's one of the ways that turning towards life very much serves and supports me, is that I feel like our conversations come from a more present place than a normal conversation, because we're in service and intending so much towards the purpose of turning towards life, of this community and of our own growth. And it feels like what makes me think of your swimming, Justin, of like dropping into something that's life-giving and that refills the teapot so that more tea can be poured. It's like I feel filled up by, I feel contacted into a way of sitting in the world, a way of being here that has a different kind of narrative to it, a different feeling to it. So I feel like this poem kind of catapults me there, where it has the familiar discombobulation of excellent poetry, of throwing us into a place where we we can't grapple in a linear way, in a polarizing way, but that we're invited into a space that questions things, that is fresh, that is alive and curious and kind of wide-eyed, and where love is possible as well. Love that isn't attached or has loads of opinions, or that just is very, very open. I think that's the feeling, is just a very open, unformedness that leaves much more possibility in the realms of my actions and opinions and the ways that I think and do things.
I was thinking as you were talking, Lizzie, about coming to meet Vesper as I did for the first time last night at your house. And holding her very close and feeling the feel of being with a person who hasn't yet been conditioned by all of the expectations that we have, that other people have of us and that we end up having of ourselves. And how totally exquisite, beautiful experience that was. And I'm thinking and feeling that as you're talking, the joyfulness of it, this sort of simple, straightforward, here's life, and isn't she, and isn't life absolutely beautiful? And as you've been talking about the Lizziness or the Justinness or the whatever it is that we get estranged from. It reminded me also of something else you said earlier. I think one of the first things you said was how certain we get, like how fixed our thinking gets. And I know this in myself so much, and I think it's why the line of the desperate notes hits me every time, because I recognize all the desperate notes I'm sort of posting. I'm not posting them on the mirror or on the wall or on the bookshelves. I'm just often just inside. And the desperation very often comes from an idea that I have about who I am and about how life is, and how certain I am about that idea. And given that idea, that way of thinking about myself, I'm then desperate because I'm frightened and things aren't working out. And so the Lizziness and the Justinness and the usness that you're talking about is particular to us. But when I met Vesper last night, it also struck me that it's all of ours. Like there's something very particular about her that's particular, but there's something that's absolutely universal that's possible to feel when being in contact with someone who's just arrived, which is that this life that we all are is ours alone and ours together. And I'm aware as I'm speaking how much I have to work. I think that's probably the right word. I have to work to allow myself to give up my certainty in order to feel that, my certainty about what my life is and who I am. And that's why this poem is so brilliant, because Derek Walcott has seen that the giving up of our certainty so that we can meet the life that we are, it certainly, in my account, it definitely involves me doing something. I have to not just carry on in my own familiar way, but it's not another, in the end, it's not another punishing thing to achieve. And I suppose you can hear me just talking about how my own thought goes so readily, but a welcome. And some years ago, when I'm sure I've told you this, I may even have said this on 100 episodes of Turning Towards Life ago. When I was 41, I had a very brief incident where I collapsed suddenly, and there was a lot of worry about whether my heart was at fault, and it turned out not to be. But in the time that I was most afraid, a very wise and wonderful friend sent me a message saying, trust your own heart. Your own heart, which was exactly the thing I was most afraid of. You have a heart that can support you. And once I knew that, whatever happened, it wasn't about everything being all right. Once I knew that, and I think that's the same thing as here, is finding out that no matter how things are going, and no matter how desperate we are, and no matter how far away from ourselves we are, this life that is the same one that you meet when you meet a newborn baby, that's the same one that's Lizzie and Justin, it is right here to hold us.
I think that's the thing that's most moving, Justin, is that it's right here to hold us, and it's never not. And so the benevolence of that, the everyday opportunity, the everyday, like it never goes, well, you haven't just sat and experienced this, so you can't now. Sorry. Like life doesn't pull it away from us, the possibility of presence or the possibility of being with this life in the way that you're talking about, the possibility of trusting. Like it doesn't get ripped away because we don't do it. It's like a forever opportunity, no matter how late in the game we are, no matter how much we've missed the boat. It's which inevitably we must have all missed the boat 1,000 trillion times. It's there waiting, always. And yes, this self has become a stranger 100 million times, and it's always still there, which is a kind of, it has a parental sense to it. Like there's nothing you can do about the some parts of life. You know, you can't change where you came from or what your lineage is or your ancestry or whatever. And there seems to be a kind of correlation between the way we want to be parented and this presence. Like it's always there. It's always there to return to when you need it. However much you've messed up, it's a presence that's not going anywhere. And so I feel like it's also for me like an invitation into the ultimate reparenting of oneself as well, where our needs can be met that maybe have never been met before by a presence that is eternally loving, actively loving and present to us. And that all the ways we look outside of ourselves to have that met, we also have the opportunity to support ourselves by allowing this to love us, the self to love the self, like to find and to welcome and to be welcomed by this ever-present loving force, if you like, this energy that is here, unquestionably here. It's very beautiful. So I really appreciate the chance to speak about this, and that we've done this with this poem, and as I had hoped, a lot got born that helps me understand it more, and I saw new things, and I'm really grateful for that. And I feel like it's such a blessing just to keep doing this, Justin. I'm so amazed that we've done something 112 times. Quite bonkers, really. And I think it's time for us to end, and we will be back next week on Sunday with a source from Justin, and just to say thank you everyone for being here, for being present to this, for supporting all of ourselves really by being present to this is what happens, isn't it? And that's what we're hoping that we're all up to, is just supporting ourselves, supporting one another, and having these conversations in service of all of our growth and deepening into this essential Lizziness, Justinness, who-ness. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Lizzie. Thank you, everyone. I promised earlier I'd remind everyone where to find us and the sources. So always on the web, turning-towards.life. On Facebook, you can search for us at Turning Towards Life and you can come and join us. I've been having a lovely time this morning, Lizzie, watching. People have been watching with us and writing all kinds of comments as we've been. I've had the window open this morning, so people are writing. Thank you, people who are writing now. The home for our wider work from which this was born is always at wearethirdSpace.org. You can find out about us there. And thank you for traveling with us, everyone. We'll see you soon.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.